So I'm going to talk about AI and travel. And I think AI is going to change really. The biggest impact will be the user interface because we'll be able for the first time to understand traveler intent. And intent is gold because if you think about how you have to search today, you just put in a city. And I don't know why you're going and who you're going with. I really, it says four people, but I don't know. And I don't really know what you want. So if you could say something more specific, like, yes, Austin, but near downtown with a great yard, then what people are developing and what I developed in my AI company some time ago is by searching all the reviews and searching all the images, I can find actually that house near downtown with a great yard. It's not in the property description, it's in a review. And so are the images. So we'll be able to find the right property. And then the hero image will be the backyard, not the front. And the review will be about the backyard. And what we proved is there's much higher conversion when you can get someone's intent, right? And the online travel agencies are already starting with this. TripAdvisor, Expedia, Booking.com are experimenting with natural language. They're experimenting and using review summaries, which you've seen on Amazon, but companies like TripAdvisor have over 1 billion reviews. So a tremendous amount of power to put in LLMs to change how people find what they're looking for. I mean, you may not know that Marriott operates the most spas in the world. Marriott operates the most golf courses of anybody in the world. They operate the most 3-star restaurants. But today that scale isn't really doing much because there's no way to search for it. I can't ask Marriott what's the best spa in France at Marriott. They can't tell you the answer, but they're now experimenting with it. So I think we're going to see natural language search, image analysis, review analysis, change the way you buy travel. There are also people doing GPT-based route planners, and they're fairly good, but they're just using generic GPT, and I think they're going to die because there's no differentiation. They don't have their own data set like TripAdvisor or Booking.com does. The other big change in travel is you're going to see sites like this, and disclosure, I'm an advisor to this one, Route Perfect, but there are others, where you say, not, I just want to fly to Madrid, but I want to fly to Madrid and drive to Barcelona. What should I do along the way? These people digitized the brains of 2,000 guides, and then they added GPT. So it's going to tell you where you should go along the way, where you should stop, what you should see based on the fact you like wine and history and art. So this is like Travelocity for drive, and 50% of hotels in the US and Europe are drive-based. So I think we're going to see the large online travel agencies and others move from just where do you want to fly to what's your entire itinerary, and therefore sell you many more products along the way. So he asked me to be very quick, but I think you're going to see travel change quite a bit in terms of the user interface. And obviously it's already being used, AI is already being used in pricing and many other forms. But I think the biggest change will be user interface. Oh, thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Terry. The first time we met was in LA, right? And I asked you to talk about failure to the Denison alumni. And you said it was important to fail, and this is how you overcame failure. And you had a failure in travel AI.
I did. It was 10 years ago. The product worked fine. We were working with IBM. The product was great, and nobody bought it. It was too early to convince the hotel chains to do anything with AI. If I had that product today, I could probably raise $100 million this afternoon. But I'm now chairman of Amgen.ai, which Stephen was former chairman, and we're using AI in travel to take emails into bookings and many more ways than that. So I did fail, but I learned a lot, and I'm putting it back to use again.
There you go. Well, maybe following on the travel as we go down the pipe, I'll let Kevin. By the way, there's been some news with Kevin. He's launched with Google. They've got their ads working with their iPads in the hotel room. So you'll have to listen up for a second.
Yes. So where would you like me to go from here?
So what scares and excites you about this travel industry?
Well,
Maybe take me off the screen. It's a little intimidating.
You look good though. There you are. So, carry on, Kevin.
yes, well, I mean, what scares me is it's such a vast industry, and each of us is different. Everybody travels their own way, and everybody has their own needs. I wouldn't say I'm scared by it. That's the challenge, is to build a solution that's deep enough, wide enough to accommodate everybody, to bring everybody a solution that will resonate and succeed with them and satisfy their requirements. And that it's a big job to do something like that. I do think that AI is almost a generic global foundational platform technology. It's not about who has the best AI. It'd be about who has the best data. Our quest is in building the best city data so that when we get to know you, we've got the best information to bring you. And in a sense, that's where our company is focused, is applying AI to old school, build it one step at a time. The economics and ingenuity of building a broad-based business and then putting the technology on top of it. So I don't know if that answers the question, Mark, or if you'd like me to pass it along.
What's the question?
I mean, basically, what scares and excites you as an investor, particularly industries, right? Most you've got three themes.
Yeah. I'll talk about industrial tech, but I'll talk about it from the lens of AI because it's a topic we've all been discussing. It's come up so many times today. If it was a drinking game, every time you hear AI, you have to drink. We would all be very drunk right now. So AI applied to industrial. If you think about AI in general, there's kind of three buckets of where AI technology is built today. One bucket are the fundamental models. So this is where OpenAI, Anthropic, and a couple others are building models. The second one is the infrastructure layer. So the infrastructure layer, this is MLOps, AIOps, where you're kind of model management, you're figuring out like how is the data, how is the model operated, different versions of the model, training the model, retraining when it gets out of date, and so forth. And there's a lot of, it's kind of the picks and shovels of AI. So if you believe AI will be important, a lot of VCs have come to that conclusion. Everyone's piling money in that infrastructure layer, right? Because no matter what happens with the fundamental models or above that, you need an infrastructure. And where I believe there's a lot of value is the third bucket. The third bucket is the application layer. The application layer is anything you do with a model, and that could be something in B2B SaaS, it could be HR, it could be travel, and it could be industrial tech. It could be solving a problem in logistics, solving a problem in manufacturing, a problem in prop tech. And this is where I see the most value, is applying what we have, the models we have, and maybe in many cases, customized models built specifically for these industries. So a model that's trained on logistics data that can very accurately predict tomorrow's price of a truck going from Alabama to Texas, and knows that like based on the weather, based on supply and demand, based on the data from many, many years before up to this moment, can with very accurate precision predict what that price of that truck will be and book it for you today without you having to do anything besides click the confirmation. And so that's where I'm basing my thesis, is on the application layer, specifically for like digitizing these old analog industries and having, for example, custom models built, specifically serving the applications like even computer vision. So training a model on visual data, like seeing 1,000 different, for example, knitting machines and how they made a mistake in a specific, like a needle that broke and how that impacts the textile. It's actually a very interesting deal I looked at not too long ago. Like that's exactly the solutions that I'm excited about, and where I see kind of really like making use of that industrial data and making a difference in these kind of very antiquated old industries through niche models with applied AI. Thank you.
Okay. You know what? I'm going to start from two sides. I think one of the things that was said is sort of the AI, the AI for the UI. And really with how we look at it now is it's not about the UI, it's about the use of the UI. I'll give you two really interesting examples. I've got a company that does KYC, enhanced KYC. They build algorithms. 90% of the users are the bank teller. And we shifted from 5 years ago where everyone had, a guy building R models and a data scientist, and there's charts and graphs and whiskers, to the point that that wasn't getting to the person at the teller that can now actually input the name and see whether or not someone's fraudulent. And my second good example is we've got a company that we invested in. The name is Senso.ai. They were one of the top AI companies in Toronto. It is 60% of all mortgages had a Senso score. And they were delivering to the BMO, BDC, these big reports. And about a year ago, the founder sat down, wrote a generative AI version of the entire product, let go all of the data scientists. He's down to 2 to 3 people. He got into YC. He was ranked as one of the top companies in YC by TechCrunch. He's literally taken off like a rocket. And the reason was, going back to the use of the AI, now support staff at the bank. You're not going to the guy who does claims. You're not going to the man and woman who does the mortgages. Now anyone at the bank, the person on the phone, literally types in, are they qualified for a mortgage? What other products I could sell them? And now it pops up. This customer, you can give them these 3 products. And that's a big change to how we have been selling and buying AI in the past 5 to 10 years. Now we get to what's worrisome. There's a term in AI in LLMs called hallucination. And that's where I'll use a good story. Google Bard was AI that was just deprecated a year ago. That was Google's AI engine. Every time there's an LLM, I type in, who is VC Puppy? And OpenAI comes back and says, oh, I don't know what you're talking about. Google Bard came back with 2 answers. 1, VC Puppy is a real dog that's active on social media. Okay. Second answer, VC Puppy is a term for some up and coming in VC. And then literally quoted, that guy is a real VC Puppy. I was like, this is embarrassing. Dear Google, I think your things are broken. And so that hallucination is great when you're planning, a birthday party, or you're looking for, hey, Google, ChatGPT, give me a job description. Now, when you're talking about enterprise data, medical records, medical claims, you cannot have hallucination. And this is where the next generation is also the getting to the next generation of generative AI, which is referred to as RAG, that is literally all focused on enterprise data. So we look at investing in both, one, the front end, but also the infrastructure in RAG, in meta labeling data to get ready so that there is no hallucination. Because if you type in, what is their blood type? What are the best medicines I could give them? Literally, it could kill someone.
So just as a footnote, where does Chu? We have to talk about this. If he's doing AI, basically enhanced healthcare advice. So back to that.
I have a fantastic company that could help with infrastructure. I'll talk.
On a rooftop in Boston.
Yes, with tequila.
So I guess I'm going to chime in from the renewable energy and energy tech perspective, and I'm going to travel to the side of the AI because obviously it's a pervasive term that we hear throughout the day, and it's such a mega trend that everybody's focused on. But I don't know if you guys have read recently, we're talking about thousands of terawatt hours a year that everything that will enable ultimately this AI will have to power. And everybody is talking also about decarbonization, what's going on in this world. But what's exciting is we do have solutions at present, technology at present, that will enable us to actually, probably within our lifetime, most of us rule out coal as a source of fuel to produce electricity. We'll need more nuclear, but definitely wind and solar combined with batteries will be able to give us the base load and things that we will need, I think, to deliver the infrastructure to enable everything, whether it's iPads in hotels and AI, it is amazing. ChatGPT based concierge or anything else that can help us do things faster and better. There's going to have to be energy behind it that will either process the data or deliver what's needed. So the challenge that I see is that the scale up of this infrastructure is really taking quite a bit of time. And I think also if we look throughout the room, we kind of have early stage VC folks, then PE folks, then public markets folks. And actually between the VC and PE bit, there's at least in the world that I operate in, which is scaling up energy infrastructure, a gap, which is you need a very large equity or capital ticket to scale up some of these technologies, yet you're still assuming venture risks in some ways. You're not quite ready for the infrastructure yieldco type capture. So PE is kind of saying, well, you need to graduate to my level, and VC is saying, well, are you delivering a breakthrough technology? Where is doubling the energy density of the cell? Where is something breakthrough? Yet, even if it's breakthrough, you may not scale for 10 years. So you won't reach the use base that you're purporting to capture when you do this. So where I'm going with this, government has a role in underwriting this risk, and there are some risks that come with that. We see that in the US with the IRA. Huge pile of money going to people that are getting in this industry. In Europe, we're seeing things as well. In Asia, Chinese have done it now for 15, 20 years, and hence they're quite a bit ahead. So I think this side of the world will have to catch up a lot. And I think for a number of us in this room, there's work out to do to obviously make returns, make our investors, stakeholders happy, but also think about how we're going to enable this amazing things that could happen in the next 5-10 years.
You were supposed to be on the asset class panel about the gap between growth and growth equity. But any questions relating to thrown up here from Terry and the panelists otherwise? Of course you can.
I'd like to look at AI from a different perspective. I'm Zadek Hashamat. I work hospitality, so I fully understand AI and how it makes our life more convenient. Right? You can search what's the best hotel in Boston, and I'm sure it will provide them. I'd like to look at AI from a consumer behavior, or what's going to happen in the next 3 years when it actually, you'll have so many jobs that will be either, like you mentioned with your friend, lots of jobs will be made redundant, or lots of people will be made redundant. And how would our economy look like when you have a large population that's either working maybe 3 days a week or 4 days in a week, so we're spending more time doing other things in our life, whether that's going on holiday or whether that's spending more time with our children. So I'd like to see it more, what's the, result of AI from that perspective rather than how it makes it convenient. So I don't know if that's a question or not, but
Happy to pontificate on it.
Been hearing this question for a long time.
It's really interesting because I hear that question a lot, and they're like, oh my God, AI is coming for our jobs. And all we're doing is just really automating tasks. When you look at the cybersecurity industry, there's a deficit in jobs. The number one job deficit is for a risk analyst in cybersecurity. Literally, they can't place people fast enough in this job, and there's a massive gap in that space. We can't educate enough workforce. And when you look at, let's say, like I have a company that's in the data labeling side. They literally hire an analyst and it takes them a month to maybe do 2,000 records to label them. And these, it will take 20 to 10 years to actually do an entire terabyte of data. And they're able to turn it around to do 20,000 to 200,000 records a month based on like the velocity. I think one of the things that's going to happen is to take a lot of these mundane tasks out of it and get the workforce to be working smarter, but also to fill these gaps like this risk analysts that are out there. One of the things that I'm super excited about is, look, I was in the analytics space. I sold analytics to some of the top brands in the country. And it was painful because people would say, well, what do I do next? And you're like, oh, I have a box squad and there's whiskers. And they're like, no, but can I press the button to do something? And it's really exciting when you start putting this in front of individuals to say, no, now you can alert someone that someone's fraudulent and you can do something about it. That's been really exciting about this because AI has been around for 10 to 15 years now. Algorithms have been around. Finally, in the last 2 years, we're getting actually real use from them. We're actually getting to make, we're not doing algorithmic trading here. We're just doing some of this mundane work, but it's important to sort of clean up what's out there, especially in the SaaS data space.
Other questions?
Yeah, my question's about trust. So brands in the hospitality space, Marriott, Hilton, people stay at them because they trust in the brand standards of them. When people talk about investing in AI, money floods to OpenAI and the other big companies because they have built this inherent brand trust because they were first movers, maybe because Sam Altman's a genius, I don't know. But the question is that trust and data, right? So a lot of these, we were talking about institutions and VC, a lot of these institutions just take fines for losing consumers' data and go, it's a byproduct. We manage a lot of data. We're eventually going to have a data hack. You're talking about cybersecurity, but people trust them, right? And yet startups, the innovators who are trying to change stuff. I've got a friend who has an innovation AI-enabled company searching private equity, like searching a universe to find best-in-class companies for people to buy. I just saw a post today. UBS have developed the same thing. UBS will win the market because people trust. I don't know why they do, but people trust UBS over an innovator. But what do you think we can do with AI to improve consumer trust in things?
Otherwise, I'm shuffling this microphone. I'm mindful that a very important person passed away. They don't know Phil Donahue. They don't know Phil Donahue. Raise some hands. Very special person. I always call myself Phil Donahue. Moving it around, we should actually have more microphones, but who wants to take on the trust?
I can jump on that one if I'm still online, Mark.
All you. Remember Phil Donahue?
We found in travel, as a startup, we'd recommend certain hotels and consumers would buy them. They would believe in us, but travel agents said, well, that isn't the best hotel in Cancun. And so what we ended up, and we'd already done this, we showed not only what consumers thought about that hotel, but also editorial reviews from magazines and guidebooks. And we really had to back up our recommendation with enough consumer and editorial reviews so people said, oh, that's why you think it's the best hotel. Now, many travel agents still said that's not the best hotel. But consumers, if you can wrapper it in enough information, can trust the recommendations you make. But you're absolutely right. Much harder for a startup to get people to believe that the data they have is trusted than a trusted brand, and the trusted brands are going to have to be careful with it.
Trust.
Yeah, I mean, how is trust built? Trust is built over continuous interactions that are all positive and like building towards kind of the belief that, yes, you're getting the right answers and you're getting kind of satisfactory results from the model. So for startups, obviously, in general, it's almost impossible for a startup to start working with a large enterprise in the beginning, right? And so a lot of startups first work with SMBs, and they start with smaller contracts, with POCs, and then build up to larger commitments, build up to enterprise level agreements down the road. And so it's the same, absolutely the same path happening with AI models and with any startup developing or having AI as a core part of their technology. Is it very likely you're not going to trust it in the beginning, but if you continuously see the right results and they're exactly the more data you feed it, you're getting even better results, then you continue using the model. And so, yes, it will take time, and it will be a lot through partnerships with some of the larger enterprises that eventually you'll build up to these bigger contracts and being able to sell to the Fortune 100.
Take this for a minute. One of the things that we saw, my second company was an ad tech, and we saw post, election from 6 years ago, 7 years ago now, or 8 years ago, that we saw regulatory bodies come in to then enforcing whether or not something was a paid ad or not a paid ad. And I think we're at the infancies of, especially with generative, and we're doing this on the enterprise side. On the enterprise side, when you make a decision or a recommendation, on the right-hand side, there's here's the reason why, from a compliance standpoint, why this decision was made. And that's what's happening on the underwriting side. That's what's happening on the support side. That's got to work its way into the consumer side. So that when Terry says, and he's on the right path of, this is why I gave you this recommendation, and then be able to say, this is why the algorithm gave it to you. That's something that's coming up next that should be coming from founders and startups, because my partner sits on a national committee and they're starting to talk about this, about how do we trust algorithms? How do we keep them in compliance? Efficacy about algorithms. And that's something that's going to come up in the next 2 years in the US, about trying to show how a decision was made. And also to then start sort of saying, well, was there a hallucination in this or was there not?
Do you want to talk about trust and supply chains? It's sort of your segue anyway.
Sure, we can touch on that. I was just going to add, I think it was mentioned in a VC panel as well, in terms of looking at opportunities, to look at it either as an emerging manager, or a direct investment company, or startup, or what have you. And actually, I'm not seeing enough of this. Maybe it's a new industry, but somebody mentioned it. Go talk to the customer. Are they using this? Is it fitting their roadmap? Can they see fidelity in what the company is doing often? Are they engaged, even if it's not just? I would really go to the end user and then find the necessary data to see if whatever it's on the table, it's validated by someone who's really going to put serious money or stake in their company development behind it. And similarly on the supply chain side, you are just part of the chain. So go one step further and be ready for that conversation. See where that company or that stakeholder base is, what their issues are those issues being solved? Or is there a roadmap, if not immediately, right? So that's kind of an easy way.
When you're raising $1 billion, it's good to talk to your customers, right?
Yeah. And they have a lot to say.
They want to, and the investors want to know that you can talk to them, contract with them. Oh, Innovate UK is in the house, so here we go. Tell us a little bit more about Innovate UK.
Okay. So our boss is more about Innovate UK. We are basically the governance innovation agency. We do a lot of things, and it's always easier to tell people what we do when I'm speaking to something about what they do, so I can make a connection. However, we have a budget of about 1.7 billion. And what we do is that mostly what people know us for is government grants. However, that's a small percentage of what we actually do. We do have connections globally in Africa, which I was telling people on this table about, and all over the world, in the UK, in US, and also in Europe. What I do specifically is engage with investors. So we help innovators all the way from ideation, all the way throughout to when they want to expand and scale. However, what I do in terms of speaking to innovators is to understand where the gaps and opportunities are between an innovator and an investor. And we are able to support with that. We invest in a lot of institutions, universities. You might hear about spin-outs. You will realize that at the tail end of it is actually asking money to investors to encourage them to invite innovators to be able to get these spin-outs. You might hear about catapults. They are an extension of us. So we are involved in every university in the UK. We have capability in terms of in Africa and other places, and we'll do so much more. However, my question is, because I think Adrian touched on it a bit earlier about the skills gap. I was in Wales yesterday, and they were talking about the fact that at the moment they're getting a lot of attention from the UAE. And what scares them a little bit is the fact that they're known for semiconductors, fintechs, and industries and innovation. However, they're having to look outside of Wales to attract the right people, which means homegrown talent is lacking. So we're always willing to learn from other ecosystems in terms of how do agencies like us and others in an ecosystem engage with industry, but also engage with investors to look at the long term. So how do we train in the next? An example, year 8 in the UK is when kids choose what subjects they want to specialize in. So design and technology, for example, which includes some of the things you need to be able to get into design, which then goes into AI or other industries. There isn't a lot of encouragement. How do we engage with industry and investors to understand how we can work together to train the next innovators in the future in terms of, for example, design and technology? So the next 5 to 10 years, that's the question.
Happy to take it. So directly to your question, so my partner, Jennifer, who actually is frequent contributor here at 361, she wrote part of the CHIPS Act and the innovation hub portion of it. And she did a couple of things that were really, really important. And I would say there was like 3 things that were put into the CHIPS Act that went out to the most recent deployment of something like, $2 billion just in a few months ago. The first one was matching the intent of what you want to do with dollars. That was the key thing. So in her case, those states, they ended up going to like Ohio, ended up going to Indiana. And as part of it, they said, all right, if you are going to be an innovation hub, going back to the 3 things, 1, there needs to be technical assistance. So you can go build a hub in Indiana, but if there's no talent in Indiana, you're hosed. So they made sure that some of the dollars, when it went out to either investors or nonprofits, had to be to specifically growing that talent base, chip manufacturers, chip designers, so that there was actually a talent base at the high school level, not just in college, but it needed to start earlier. The second one that she put in, which was pretty incredible, she said, look, if you're going to have this talent, you need to make sure that there's childcare associated with every factory. Because of her, every innovation hub has to provide childcare. And then the third piece, she said, you also have to make sure that your hiring practices are actually reflective to the makeup of the community that's in the area. And specifically, those individuals and sort of grants that were given and these dollars that were given are actually being monitored against that. Because the worst thing to do is you give a grant of 500 million, you educate the talent, but then the talent leaves or the talent then comes back as flown in, and you've got to make sure that you're growing the homegrown talent. And it's funny because these aspects of the CHIPS Act have then gone and pushed out into the state's deployment of SSBCI dollars to then say, well, you're right, it should be here. We should be growing our own talent. And I'm happy to talk more about where are areas that education, because one of the missing gaps is trying to bring in outside investors into the areas. And this is where the SSBCI, which are the dollars that went from the states, from the federal government in the US to specific states, has specifically been earmarked to go into these specific areas. Time will tell how successful it is, but making sure that there's early stage dollars to fund these early stage companies is going to be critical. And so in the VC table, we've heard that we need to have early stage dollars to go out into this ecosystem.